London, Getty, London, September 21st. I am coming to London, and Left It Wall is going to be screening at the Bill Murray at 3 p.m. That's September 21st, the Bill Murray, 3 p.m. It will be the only UK screening of Left It Wall. Can't wait to see you there. Grab your tickets now at romplicone.com. London, can't wait to see you again. It's been too long. romplicone.com for tickets. See you September 21st. Episode 47. Michael Blaha. Michael Blaha is an entertainment attorney, performer, and fringe producer. I met him because of that last thing. Michael loves fringe festivals and has made it a large focus of his life. He's a nomad. He's an example of living a creative life on your own terms, which I'm always a fan of. Please welcome to the show, Michael Blaha. I know that you've done a lot of different things, and what I'm kind of curious about is the timeline. I mean, you have been an entertainment attorney. You've been a manager. I know you most as a producer, particularly in the fringe circuit. So kind of give me the Michael Blaha timeline.
Well, the through line is the entertainment law, although not even that's 100%. So I should say the legal side is pretty much since I became, after school. So I came out here in 79. Jesus. Wow. So I've been doing this a while. So I came out in 1979, right out of law school. And as you may know from other friends that you have in law school and stuff, or just heard, the typical drill is you summer clerk after second year of law school. So after my second year of law school, which was back east in Duke in North Carolina,
wow, you went to a good school.
Yeah, it's a good school.
Yeah.
It was fun.
Is that where you're from?
No, I'm from Miami. I was born in Tampa, but I'm from the Miami area. That's where I spent. I went to undergraduate at University of Miami, and so I pretty much was in southern Florida, let's say, from about the age of 3 till around 18. I was in Miami area, and we stayed there a couple years. My dad was in the Air Force, and so we moved out of Tampa and then moved to Homestead Air Force Base down in Homestead, Florida. So I came out here, worked for a big corporate law firm for a couple of years in non-entertainment stuff, and then kind of started doing some marginal, entertainment law adjacent stuff at that firm, and then got an offer to work in-house at Columbia Pictures. And that's really when I started practicing entertainment law, was in Columbia Pictures. I was there during pretty much the 80s, and then Lorimar Telepictures. I don't know if you remember Lorimar, but they made Dallas and Dynasty and Falcon Crest. They were like a huge TV company, and they decided to start a feature film division, and they poached me from Columbia in the late 80s. So I was at Lorimar for a couple of years, and then Warner Brothers brought Lorimar, and I was redundant, as the Brits would say. They already had a Mike Blaha at Warner Brothers, and so they paid me off. So I took a year off, completely wasted that year of my life in so many ways. And then I started my own office in 93 and have been pretty much practicing entertainment law since then. The theater stuff came about through a couple of things. I met my current business partner, Nigel Miles Thomas. How British does that sound? In 89. And that is because a client of mine who was a screenwriter and director was the artistic director of a theater company up in North Hollywood called the Gateway Repertory Company. And it's long gone. In 2 seconds, I'll explain that story. But so I had a mutual friend. Nigel was staying with him in Santa Monica in 1989. And he goes, "Oh, my friend Mike Blaha is in the theater world," because I was the associate artistic director at the Gateway. And so he introduced me to Nigel, and that was that showbiz, history, as they say. So Nigel and I have been friends since then, and we produced a couple plays here in L.A. And then fast forward to 99, maybe, and we went to Hong Kong Fringe because maybe 97, before the handover from Britain to China, Republic of, Hong Kong had a very vibrant and prestigious Fringe Festival. It's gone now. I don't think they've had it since the handover. But that was my first exposure to Fringe because I didn't really know what a Fringe festival was. And so Hong Kong Fringe for a couple of years. And then Edinburgh has always been in the back of my mind as a theater guy. You know, you go to Edinburgh, it's sort of the mecca for theater and stuff. So we found a show because of my legal background. It was a client who was a playwright, was producing these plays, 3 plays in an omnibus. So it was like 3 one-acts made up in evenings, production or whatever. And one of those one-acts had a different solo show, and I saw it and thought it was brilliant. And we wound up producing that in Edinburgh in 2001 and stayed. I've been going to Edinburgh every year since. Wow. Like 100 and something plays. So the theater stuff really started. I've been doing it for quite a while, but I think it started in earnest probably around 2000, 2001. Because now I go, Edinburgh, Adelaide Fringe, Hollywood Fringe just ended yesterday. And I produce theater outside of the fringes, although most of the stuff I do is associated with festivals. So, but that's the timeline. It was kind of a natural. There are a lot of producers out there who were lawyers and got involved in it because their clients wanted, to partner up with them in various settings. So some of my film producing credits are the same kind of thing. It's as a result of having been the lawyer on a production, and then I wound up having an expanded role and wound up doing more. So I picked up a couple of co-producer credits or whatever.
Well, what brought you into theater initially? I mean, it sounds like you were doing some theater production work before Fringe stuff. So was that just something that you were interested in, or was it only law that brought you there?
No, it was not at all. In fact, I keep I try to keep a very robust wall between my law and my producing because I don't want people to muddle what those two involvements are. So Fringe management, I don't even do my own legal work for Fringe management, even though I am an entertainment lawyer. Because no, it was just an interest in theater. I acted a little bit. Who hasn't, right? I was in a couple of plays in high school and college, and but I wasn't a hardcore drama kid or anything. But I did do a little bit of acting. And then, I've always liked live theater. There's just to me, there's really no substitute for it because there's, it's like you as a stand-up, you can totally relate, I would imagine. There's nothing, it's great to see a Netflix special, but being there in the room when it's happening is kind of different and unique. And that's true of theater as well. And I've just always really enjoyed and cherished that aspect of it. And then, it's just throughout the 90s, it was kind of catch as catch can. I did a few shows here. And Nigel and I produced a couple of things. We produced what the English call a pantomime. I don't know if that rings a bell, but it's an old sort of music hall offshoot type of style Christmas show. And it's always got it's usually, I shouldn't say always, but it's usually based on a fairy tale character of some kind. So it's Snow White or, Cinderella. So we did Cinderella with Zsa Zsa Gabor as the fairy godmother in 1993. And that was a trip because Zsa Zsa was something else. So that was a big trial by fire back in 93. And Nigel and I just stayed business partners and close friends since.
How many Fringe festivals, and you don't have to give me like the full list, but if you can kind of give me highlights, like how many Fringe festivals have you participated in, and where are some of the highlights?
Sorry about that. I just realized I had plugged in my power source into the laptop, but I never plugged it into the wall socket.
Oh,
like flashing alert!
All right. Well,
the first
good save.
Yeah, right. Otherwise, you would wonder what the hell. So Hong Kong Fringe was the first one I got into. Then Edinburgh. And just this year, actually, we started producing at the Adelaide Fringe in Australia, which is second after Edinburgh. Edinburgh's number one. It's got like 3,700, 3,800 shows. And Adelaide's got about half that, maybe 1,500, 1,600. And then I also, for the first time this year, went to the Prague Fringe, which is much, much smaller. It's under 100 shows, but it's got kind of a prestigious, and it's a beloved festival on the circuit for whatever, well, not for whatever reason, for a number of reasons, including the fact that it is small, it's really well run, it's very well supported locally, et cetera. I compare it, I don't know if you've ever been to the Telluride Film Festival or heard of it, but I compare that as opposed to like Sundance or Toronto. Prague is like Telluride because it's small and not that many people even know about it or hear about it. But the people that really follow film festivals know that Telluride is kind of a prestigious place to have a film. Same thing with Prague. It's not that big or anything, but it's really well regarded. And so those are the main ones. There's New York Fringe is back. It actually went away for a couple years, even before the pandemic. I think it had gone away. And now it's back, which is cool because the New York Fringe used to be pretty vibrant. The Hollywood Fringe, obviously, the one I just said just ended. That's up to about 370 shows this year, so it's the largest festival in the United States. There is a very robust Fringe circuit in Canada, and the Canadian Fringe circuit. There are people that make a living just doing the Canadian Fringe, because their financial model is a bit more generous to the artist, and you can basically march across the Canada, from province to province throughout the summer. It starts way on the East Coast in Nova Scotia and ends in Vancouver in September, I think. So you can go to one, every couple of weeks and just go across the country. I've been to a couple of them there, Vancouver and Edmonton. I've been to. There's a Fringe in Camden in London, which I've not really been to, but I'm aware that it's becoming more of a thing. I've been to the Philadelphia Fringe, which is pretty small. Pittsburgh Fringe, also very small. San Diego Fringe, also very small. The only other fringes in the United States that are competitive with Hollywood Fringe in terms of size and notoriety or whatever is probably Orlando. Orlando is very well regarded. And then Rochester, New York. Go figure.
Mm.
And there's others. There's others, but those are the main ones.
Isn't Indianapolis kind of a bigger one?
See, I've heard of the Indianapolis Fringe, but I did not know that. It may well be. I don't have as much experience with some of the, I've heard of the Indianapolis Fringe, but I don't know where it falls, it may be bigger than Rochester. It may well be. It's probably is bigger than Pittsburgh and Philly, because neither of those are particularly, large in terms of size. But, then there's fringes all over the world. It's like there's a Stockholm Fringe, there's a Dublin Fringe, there's a Cape Town Fringe, there's a Milan Fringe, and the list. I don't know of any in Asia, which is kind of weird. When I say Asia, Australia obviously has a couple. Auckland, there's one in New Zealand, but I consider that Australasia. Far East. Like there's not.
No, I understand.
I don't think there's one in Japan, as far as I know. There's none in China anymore, and so I think some people are talking about starting one in Mumbai. The same guy that runs Prague, I think, is going to start one in Mumbai, and also now they're going to have one in Singapore. So they are starting to fill in that gap. None in Saharan Africa, as far as I know. Again, the only one I know in Africa is in Cape Town. And I don't know too much about South America either. And I would love for there to be a Fringe festival in Rio or in Buenos Aires or something. So maybe that's the next project.
So, and then later when did you start performing your own shows?
Oh, geez. The first time I did that was in 2022. I've acted before, as I mentioned.
Yeah, so you waited a long time.
I waited a real long time. I always, not always, but when I was a young man, in my 20s, I wanted to do stand-up, and I just never had the balls to do it, really, I think. I try to think if there was any other reason. That was pretty much it. I didn't have the nerve to try it. And my friends...
still can. It's not too late.
Yeah, well,
if you're doing print shows, you can still do it.
Yeah, my friends weren't really that supportive because I was an attorney. And so it was kind of like, why are you talking about doing stand-up? You're an attorney.
Greg Giraldo was an attorney.
Yeah, well...
Yeah, Greg Giraldo was an attorney. Jeff Chrysler, he has a law degree. I don't know if he practices, but yeah. I can think of a couple. Tommy Savitt has a law degree. I can think of a couple comics that,
Well, this also was a while ago. But in any event, I can't blame them. It's all on me. I just never really focused on it, and probably got some of my creative Jones served by the producing, and managing a couple comics at one point. And so maybe that, I'm using that as an excuse, but that might have been why I wasn't as intent. And then why I finally did it is just a combination of factors. I think the pandemic probably threw a lot of people into, or not threw them in, but, caused a lot of us to think about things more. And, like, what am I doing? And if I've always wanted to do stand-up comedy, then what the hell am I waiting for? Because tomorrow the world might blow up, So I started writing the first show. And it's there are two things. Both of the shows, I forget. Did you see Shag Down? No, you couldn't because it was.
No, we conflicted.
Yeah,
we were at the same time, but you had that one off day that you could come see my show, but I didn't have. I just did the half front, and you did. Yeah, thank you.
No, and I loved it. Great.
I didn't get to see you, and then there was another thing when you were in Hollywood with the show you were doing. It was right when I was in the Midwest working on my hour for Edinburgh. So when you were in Hollywood, I was not in town. I was in the United States, but I wasn't in LA. And then when we were both in Edinburgh, our times conflicted. So I never got to see your show.
Well, part of it was an easier call because I played a character instead of I wasn't doing traditional stand-up where it's me. It wasn't Mike Blaha. It was a character professor. So that made it a little easier. And also because it was a lecture, the comedy was in the style of a college lecture. I could use notes and didn't have to really, I was never really completely off book because I could refer to the notes as you would in a college lecture. It was a crutch, but an easy one to pull off. It didn't look like I was looking at the set list or something, and so that's part of the reason I did it. So the first one was Spank the Monkey. And it was about slang words for masturbation, Spank the Monkey. And then I did that at the Royal Academy. No, what was it called? The Royal Academy of Edinburgh or something. It was so funny. It was like perfect because here I am playing this stuffy college professor, but I'm talking about wanking in such hallowed halls of the Royal Society of Edinburgh. So that went very well. I got a really nice review in the Scotsman from that year. And then the following year I did the Free Fringe as you did, right? You did the Free Fringe, I think.
Yep.
I was in the Hanover Tap over in Newtown, and I did very okay. Yeah, I didn't, I wasn't selling out every day, but I got one of the things I only did the last 2 weeks because I was producing so many shows and Nigel was in a show both those years. Nigel was performing. And so the first 2 weeks, I didn't want to have both of us unavailable. So I just performed the last 2 weeks of the festival in both cases. And that made things a little easier too. So yeah, last year was shagadelic, slang words for shagging, obviously. And it was fun. I loved it. It was great, and got some really nice feedback. Now, not everyone loved it. I have some. I don't know how you feel about this. I'm curious. I know I'm not supposed to be interviewing you, but I mean, have you ever had a friend of yours not get you comedically? I mean, it's tough. Like I have friends.
That's never happened to me. No.
You're a lucky bastard.
No, I'm kidding. That happens to me all the time. I don't think my wife finds me funny, which I appreciate it though. It makes me work harder.
That's tough. Yeah. I mean, my two best friends in LA came to see me when I did Shagadelic last year, and they were very supportive and I think actually did genuinely enjoy it. And I had another friend who's I'm not going to drop names, but she's a pretty well-known actor and playwright, Tony Award winner, in fact. And she freaking loved it. So that was real, because she's a writer, and it meant a lot to me that she really genuinely loved it. But I have some friends over in the UK. They don't find me that funny. They're great friends and we're good mates, but they're just like, no, sorry, not our thing. And it's tough. It's like, well, you want your friends to have fun with you and enjoy your stuff. But in any event, so, but yeah, I got some people coming up to me after, and, the first year doing Spank the Monkey, one of the jokes was about the slang in Finland for Spank the Monkey. I don't remember what it was, but it was like stroke the giraffe or whatever the hell it was. And so I'm doing this lecture, and there's two guys sitting in front, and they're stone faced the entire time. And I'm like, I know you don't know what that's like either in comedy, but trust
right.
me. Yeah.
I mean, I was like literally picturing people because, especially in the context of the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, where there are thousands of shows going on, you may be the sixth show that someone sat through that day. They may very well be enjoying themselves, but they really just can't even show it anymore. Like they're just completely fried. And you always remember those people who look like they're about to fall over. You don't remember all the people who are having a great time.
Right. Well, these guys, and I knew Finnish people because I had done some work in Finland, so I'd been there a couple of times, and I didn't know they were Finnish during the show. There was no way to know that. But afterwards, they came up to me and said, "This is the funniest show we've ever seen." And I did know during the show they were Finnish, because when I said the joke in Finnish, they all of a sudden started laughing after the first time in the entire show. All of a sudden they went nuts, and they thought it was the funniest thing they'd ever heard. So I'm thinking to myself, I wonder if they're Finnish. And sure enough, not only were they Finnish, but they were doctors in Finland, and they loved the show. And they're just not particularly demonstrative until it's something about the mushroom in Finland. It just occurred to me. I don't remember what the verb is, but you do something to a mushroom in Finland to masturbate.
Oh, that's the slang. Okay.
That's the slang in Finland. Yeah, I mean, that was much of the show, was like, what is it around the world? And, especially in the UK, of course, in America, but in the history, the etymology of it, that was in the title of the show.
What are some of the big ones in the UK? Because I find their slang infinitely more humorous sounding than ours. Like, I love, like, just the word fanny is pretty freaking funny.
I know. Well, and also it's because, then you got the overlap, with fanny being what it is in the UK versus what it is here.
Right.
So that adds to some. Let me think. Spank the Monkey is actually more of a US based one.
Yeah.
So that was not particularly considered to be. I'm going to just look real quick. I can't. If I can cheat and look at my script.
Yeah, go ahead, man. You weren't kidding when you said you were never fully off book. Yeah, I don't know. What's the UK one?
Can you hear me okay? Because you're breaking up on my end.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Are you all right?
And you can hear me okay?
I can hear you just fine.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Then we'll just leave it at that. Because there was a minute where all of a sudden you spanked the monkey. I hope this is the script. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, I kind of started out joking about some of my Flog the Dolphin is one, of course. I say, of course, like, yes, well, obviously. Etymology, basically John Thomas, a meat and two veg. So it wasn't only about masturbation. It was also about, slang words for penis. So they referred to theirs as their John Thomas. And also in Scotland, it's your Tadger, your Tadger, rhymes with badger.
I've never heard that. All right.
Yeah, that's a big one in Scotland.
About.
Yeah, if they talked about the Tadger.
Fringe.
Yeah, exactly. I would be careful about discussing your Tadger in public. And then I do a whole thing about cum and coming, and it's not all masturbation, as it turns out.
So you did a kid show for your first?
Yeah, exactly. It was a 10:30 a.m.
Definitely an all ages AM show.
Yeah.
Bring the whole family.
Absolutely. Wank, of course, I think is the biggest one in the UK.
Oh yeah, that one.
And so I talked about wank and wanking, and the fact that there's a famous song in the UK, and I talked about wank and bank and spank and spank bank, et cetera, et cetera. It was Pet the Poodle is one. A lot of animal related ones, as it turns out. Choke the chicken. Yeah, go figure. So that was it. Yeah, and then there's just a whole bunch from wax the carrot. I mean, come on.
So what made you decide to go that direction for your first show? Like, was this an idea you had for a long time, or?
Yes, I was going to do it pre-pandemic, actually, in my defense, in the sense that it wasn't only the pandemic that finally pushed me over the edge. I had taken notes and written a few parts of it even before then. I don't know. I just love puns, and, it's all about the puns, and I love words. I love etymology. I'm a big crossword guy, all the word puzzles. I love that stuff. And so it was a combination of wanting to do a show about word history. Because my goddaughter, when she was in her teens, she and I had this email correspondence that was hilarious. Obviously, I'm saying that, but it was her asking me, so the word of the day or the word of the week or whatever it was, she would ask me what the origins of it were. And I would come up with some insanely wrong, not wrong like, sexually or anything like that, but just off the mark, inaccurate comments about what the origins of these words were. And she knew it. I mean, it wasn't, she wasn't expecting me to tell her that they were truly accurate. And it was just an ongoing correspondence that we had for like a year when she was 14 or something. I don't know. So that was part of it, is I've always loved word origins, and I've always loved puns. And who doesn't want to spank their monkey? I mean, it's we all do it.
Those are all universal. Yeah.
It's a very universal thing. Although Nigel told me, and I think he's probably right, that it makes people uncomfortable. They don't want to really, because that's sort of personal. So shagging, I think, was easier, because even though everyone still shags, you're not shagging yourself. Although
right.
I suppose you could. But yeah, it's more of an external, outward looking bunch of jokes. Whereas talking about masturbation makes people a little squirmy. And I don't even think, to be honest, I don't even think Nigel finds me that amusing. He's my business partner. He's tried to be supportive, but it's pretty clear that he's not particularly impressed, to be honest. That's my impression anyway. Maybe I'm wrong.
What are you going to do?
Nothing.
I mean, it's just, well, let me ask you this, because I kind of want to get into this. What is it about the Fringe and just the concept of the Fringe? I mean, well, first, let's back up a little further, actually. How would you describe just a Fringe festival to somebody? If someone's just, what is that? What is a Fringe festival in Mike Blaha's words?
Yeah, I mean, a Fringe festival is a festival of mostly theater, but including comedy in the broader sense. Could be dance, physical theater. I think it originally was more theater-based, more drama-driven than these other things. But since the original Fringe was probably Edinburgh in 1947, and it was, do you know the history of slam dance vis-a-vis Sundance? I mean, Slam Dance was a film festival that started because people couldn't get into Sundance, and they wanted to sort of put back. And the Edinburgh Fringe started on a similar basis. There's something called the Edinburgh International Festival, which is still going, in fact. And the International Festival is more mainstream, big companies from Stockholm, or, a major opera company from Dusseldorf or whatever. So it's more classical music. And there's some, classic drama too. You got Chekhov, you got, Ibsen and that kind of stuff. But that's more like high end, highbrow stuff. And these students wanted to do their own stuff. And so they started the Fringe Festival on the fringe of the main festival. And now in you probably know this in the UK, Fringe theater has a meaning like sort of off Broadway. So if it's Fringe theater, it doesn't mean necessarily it's in a theater festival of any kind. It just means it's in a theater that's considered to be sort of off Broadway and possibly more experimental and more avant-garde, more artsy. And that's true, I think, of Fringe festivals too. They're usually very democratic in the small d sense that they're open. They're really not that carefully curated by the umbrella organization. So you get varying degrees of quality as a result, but you also get anybody that wants an outlet, has an outlet. So that's probably its number one feature, is how open it is my guess. There's some, I think Prague is curated. So if you don't, tickle the fancy of Steve, the guy that runs it, then you may not get into the Prague Fringe. But most of them, Edinburgh, Hollywood, all the other ones they're curated at the venue level. You have to get in, have a venue say yes to you. but they're not. As a general, that might mean you can't get into the best top 3 venues if your show's not to their liking. But you'll find a home somewhere at the Edinburgh Fringe if you just keep working it. Like I don't think Alex, the Free Fringe, he doesn't impose his own tastes or judgment. He just assumes a show has got something going on because of the materials, et cetera. So most shows that apply are probably going to get into the Free Fringe as a practical matter. Most shows that apply to the vast majority of the venues will get at least an offer from 1 or 2 venues, and then they're home free because the Edinburgh Fringe Society doesn't dictate anything. And so it's open. It's a particularly open place for LGBTQ shows, I think. Now that's become less of an issue over the last 10 years, maybe, but 20 years ago, it was a big deal, I think, for certain types of shows to get an audience or get an airing or whatever. And diversity in general, I think it's it allows theater companies that maybe don't have the huge amount of resources to put on a 6-week run. You can put up a Hollywood Fringe show for like a couple $1,000s, which I know it's a lot. I mean, that's still a lot of money, but it's not a $50,000 production budget for a run in Hollywood. And so I think that's one of the appeals too. Certainly some people go for the travel. They just, let's go to Prague, and it's a way to justify taking a trip to Prague, and that's fine too. And some of the people that are in the Fringe that's all they want out of it, is they just want to go to a Fringe festival. Others, it's an attempt to build the show, get better reviews, work out the show a little bit, and maybe get a more successful run. And not successful, a more commercial, more uptown run or something, And that's happened. There's been quite a few shows out of Edinburgh that have gone on to, there's some famous examples like Fleabag, the TV show that came out of Edinburgh. There's other examples of that. And I've had a couple of shows that went from Edinburgh to the Soho Theatre in London and had a nice little run out of that. And one of our first productions became a film and also became a radio play for the BBC World Service. And so I'm actually an Academy Award winner, but nice. It's in radio. It's the Sony Radio Academy. I'll take it. So yeah, we won best radio drama that year off of one of our Edinburgh shows. So yeah, people have different reasons to go, but it's basically a community of, very much, it's all about community in almost across the board. It's about supporting the other artists and seeing a pretty diverse, group of people. And I don't mean just diverse in terms of race and ethnicity, just diverse across the board, economics, interests, what interests people. And you'll see everything from, a show about baseball to a show about, somebody and their grandmother with puppets, which I just saw, to all kinds of stuff. Clowning is big this year. There's a lot of clown, based shows. And I don't mean Bozo the Clown. I mean clowning as a style of theater, physical theater or whatever. It's just, there's all kinds of stuff out there. And the Fringe Festivals are probably the place that people can get their shows seen for less money in a focused area. Edinburgh, you've been there. How many millions of people were coming through Edinburgh that month? It's amazing. Mm-hmm. There's people that saw you that would have never seen you, and they'd never come to the LA or New York or wherever you're performing. So it was a chance to get a new audience for performers. But it's a festival of arts. I said I wrote an article a few years ago about the Edinburgh Festival, and I said it's the culture crack den. Whatever fix you want, man. You got music, comedy, theater, dance. It's all there in the month, and it's pretty amazing.
What really drew you to it? I mean, we talked about your love for theater, but what particular about the Fringe really just made you migrate to it?
Well, in the first instance, trying to remember why I went to Hong Kong Fringe. I think I met somebody here that had a show at the Hong Kong Fringe, and I love to travel, as you and I have discussed before, and so I don't think I've been to Hong Kong twice, both for the Fringe Festival, 97, 98, I think, or it might have been 96, 97. But I just went mainly to go to Hong Kong and check out this, like, what is this Fringe Festival I hear about, and then I loved it. So I came back my next year with a show that I produced there. And then I found that one show I was mentioning about, that had been, the actor was in a play I produced, but he had his own one-man show, I should say, that I thought was amazing, called Runt. And that's why we went to Edinburgh. And Nigel had been to Edinburgh before as an actor as well as a producer. And I just called him up and go, hey, I think I found the show that we should take to Edinburgh together. And that was how it started. And then having done it, I just freaking loved the energy and it's like summer camp. It's like going back to summer camp 25 years in a row. There are people I don't see or speak to or don't. Otherwise, it's the month of August. And then the rest of the year, who knows what they're doing. And I'm sure the same with me. And there are also other friends that I interact with throughout the year, of course. But there are certainly few that I just basically they're Edinburgh friends. And that's it. It's summer camp kind of. It's the energy. It's the supportiveness of the artists. You probably saw that, when you were performing, they're just very, well, maybe not everybody. There are assholes in every context and every location, but I'm hopeful that you probably made some new friends while you were there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I had an absolutely incredible time. And I feel like I was as prepared as one could possibly be without having done it, because I just did. It was something I always wanted to do. Like from the day of my first open mic, I always wanted to perform at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. It was just something that I just always found it very intriguing. I was always just really interested in the whole thing.
How did you even know about it? How did you first even become aware that there was this thing called the Edinburgh Fringe, let alone that it was a great place for comics?
I think people that I liked as a fan did it. And so that's how I, knew like sense. What it was and stuff. Not even just comics, but like, musicians I liked and stuff like that. I think I don't know how much I told you about this, but one of the coolest things about Edinburgh Fringe for me this time around was a lot of people that I had just been fans of for 20 years. I got to finally meet. I got to meet Latch in person. I'd never met him because he'd been living in Scotland for the past 20 years. I got to meet Attila the stockbroker. And, I've been fans of those guys since before I was doing stand-up. So for me, it was sort of like, in a way, it was sort of like life coming full circle. Like being a fan of this stuff got me into the Fringe just as a human. And then when I started doing stand-up, I was, someday I'm going to do the Fringe. And it took a while because it's not a cheap thing to do. It's not an easy thing to do. And there was always something standing in the way. And I think for me, too, the pandemic was, I kind of thought, okay, I'm going to just say I'm doing it and I'm going to freaking do it because there will always be an excuse not to do it. So
that's what we tell our clients. Our business now is to help people go there. And somebody says, I just don't know. And I'm like, okay, well, it's not going to get any easier. It's not going to get any better. Yeah. Just do it. And that's easy for me to say, because I'm not the one shelling out for them at least $25,000, which is, $20,000 or whatever it winds up being. And so, it's tough, but you just should just do it because it is easy. And I'm sort of guilty. I don't have a show this year. And I am going to write a new show, but it's going to be Mike Blaha. It's not going to be the professor. And so
you're going for it.
I am going for it.
We're hearing it here first, folks.
Yep. I'm going to do an hour stand-up probably in Adelaide in the spring is my guess. Is I'll probably have it ready by then and then maybe do it in Edinburgh next year. It's going to be about my traveling. It's going to be a travel-based show, hopefully with other things. We'll see. I gotta write it down.
No, that's fantastic. Well, that's awesome. I look forward to seeing it. Hopefully, well, unless there's a million conflicts, because I plan to go to the Edinburgh Fringe again in 2025. So I'm sure we'll be on at the exact same time. But if that doesn't happen, I can't wait to see your show.
I'll do it, and I'll probably try it out. Whether I do it in Adelaide or not remains to be seen. but I'll almost certainly do it in the Hollywood Fringe next summer. So same issue. If you're around and available and haven't moved to Italy yet and haven't and are around, then we can do that. Because I had a good time doing it at the Hollywood Fringe the last time, so I probably will repeat that as a sort of. It's a great workout. The Hollywood Fringe is a great workout for Edinburgh. It's just because you get to do a couple under the radar shows, and a month later you can go to Scotland and start doing it again. So we'll see. I hope I have I've got tons of notes. I don't know your process. We've never really talked about it. I don't know if you scribble down notes for a year and then start collating it into a show, or what exactly.
For stand-up? Stand-up, I'm a little different. I like to just record ideas because you're saying it. When I'm writing a script, I write it, and when I'm writing a screenplay or a play or a pilot or whatever, I write it. But for stand-up, I usually don't physically write it. I just record it and then just listen, and then I write it on stage. I'll try it on stage, find out where the beats are, find out where the fat needs to be trimmed. So I still go to a lot of open mics. Like I still go to open mics and work on new material. Right. And that's
probably what I'll do. I'll work it out certainly before, but I think it's interesting you say that because I did record certain bits on the other two shows, Shagadelic. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure why I haven't been doing that here. I've just been writing them in notes as opposed to recording. And it's actually more. It makes more sense to do it now than then because those were written down lecture type.
Yeah. Bits. Yeah, it depends on the show. When I wrote Lucian, I did physically write Lucian because it was a little different. It wasn't stand up. Even though there were jokes in it, I still wrote all that out just because it was like a different type of show. But with my stand up, I've always just recorded it. And then when I try to tackle a Fringe show, I mean, that's still a new thing for me.
Right.
I've always just been a straight up stand up. Here's 45 minutes of jokes. It's only in the past couple years that I started trying to have a theme with a show and trying to kind of bring it full circle. And having done it, I like it more than anything else. So now I'm working on another, stand-up show for the Fringe. And it's going to be about how my therapist dumped me. And I'm going to kind of tie it into bigger, like what I like to do is I kind of have a central thing, but then it connects to other themes, like Balding is Punk Rock alluded to a specific joke in my act, but it was all about how I cope with the world at large, and the various ways I do it. And this show is going to be, my therapist dumped me. What are all the factors that led to that? And what does that mean? And so yeah.
Cool. Well, that is, I do tell people that have inquired about whether I'm going to do another show that I'm going to write a stand-up show. And that's the phrase I use, the quote. But I think it is. I mean, it's going to be an hour, but it's not going to be, hey, it's my wife, take her, please. Obviously it's going to be about the traveling, but I hope there will be some themes around that, or woven through that with the jokes. There will be comedy, I hope. Otherwise, I won't call it a stand-up comedy if it's not funny. That would be a misfire.
Then you just have a spoken word show.
Yeah, I think it could just be. But I've seen so many good, what I consider stand-up shows that have a narrative. That have a theme. I saw one in Edinburgh a couple of years ago. I was a judge for a while. I don't know if we talked about this, for Laughing Horse, which is one of the comedy festivals there, or comedy competitions rather. And one of these guys did a show about his grandfather, who was a famous boxer. And I don't give a shit about boxing. I couldn't care less. But it was a incredibly moving and hilariously funny show. I mean, it had all kinds of comedy, interwoven along with the story of his grandfather. And I've seen a few like that, and that's not a newsflash. I mean, I know that that's probably more so what's going on these days in a lot of in the comedy world. So I'm intending to write an hour or thereabouts of comedy, but it's going to have a narrative to it, I guess, is for lack of a better word, phrasing.
How would you say that the Fringe world, and in particular Edinburgh, how has it changed? Yeah,
I've been there. So this will be our 24th year, I think. And it has just gotten bigger. I mean, that's inevitable, I guess. And it's gotten more commercial, which is kind of a cousin of getting bigger. It's probably getting increasingly more comedy centric, which has always been for those of us. Well, I don't count myself, actually. I shouldn't say us, because I do comedy, not only myself, but, I produced some comedians and stuff too. So I'm not necessarily against it, but yeah, I think there's this mood or thought amongst theater producers that it's getting harder and harder to do theater in Edinburgh. Same in Adelaide, I guess, although this was my first real year in Adelaide producing. I got the impression there, like the Adelaide program, out of 1,500 shows, only 10% of them were theater. The rest of them were comedy, magic, burlesque, circus, clown, whatever, you name it. And the actual, what one would call theater drama, and it might be comedic drama, but, drama in the sense of being a play as opposed to sketch comedy or something, is a minor slice. And it's true in Edinburgh, too. And it's getting, I was going to say it's getting worse, but that's that's being judgmental about whether it's a good or bad development. It is definitely getting more pronounced. However, whatever you feel about it, it's becoming more and more of a comedy festival over the years. I think that's sort of the general feeling about it. After the pandemic, there was all kinds of discussions, and I'm sure this is true in the stand-up world and the music everywhere, not just the arts for that matter, across the board. Things were going to change, and one of the ways Edinburgh was supposedly going to change was to go back to its roots of being more avant-garde, artistic, and experimental, and all that. Because you can see, affordable, because the housing costs have gotten just untenable there. And that's been the main increase in costs, other than generic inflation, has been the housing costs have been just absolutely have gone through the roof. Rents have more or less doubled for renting a flat, for renting an apartment there since I started. Well, since I started, they've quadrupled since 24 years ago. And that's making it harder and harder for people to come unless they live there, which is a very small part of the Edinburgh Festival, are locals. It's definitely getting bigger, more commercial. There's more money. You see name acts, comedians that you would not think would do a so-called Fringe Festival, but they will do, a couple of weeks in Edinburgh. Some of which are, I don't know, do you know Jason Byrne, the Irish comedian?
I know the name, but
Jason's massive in Ireland, and he's very funny. He should be. He's really good. He's a nice man on top of it. But he'll sell out 1,000 seats, a few days, a few nights. And there's other people like him that make, he can come make a few dollars or pounds, as the case may be. And so, is that really a Fringe festival? I don't know. I mean, his part probably isn't so much. In terms of being on the fringe of society, it's not. He's mainstream. He's a talk. I mean, look, Ricky Gervais did the Fringe last year. Come on. I mean, I actually think he's a funny man, but I don't think he's a Fringe comedian. I think,
yeah.
But what is that, right? So
I hear you.
That's been part of it. But I think I think so. All those changes didn't happen. Flyering was going to go away because flyering is so bad for the environment. It's just so much wasted paper and all the posters, and everyone feels they have to do it, as do we, because if you don't, you
have to.
Yeah, the shows are going to say, why aren't you flyering?
At least they recycle everything. Or
they do.
They do their best.
They're good about trying to recycle and all that. That's great. But that didn't go away. Everyone was going to go to QR codes because nobody wanted to take a flyer anymore because of the COVID. And that didn't happen. People are still out there flyering their butts off. So I don't know. There's been, and every year some of the venues say, this is the last year we're going to do this because it's so expensive. We're losing all this money, but they still seem to keep going. I think one of the fallacies, though, is the biggest moneymaker, the biggest beneficiary, I should say, is the University of Edinburgh by far, because they keep, I think, all of the booze. So all of the bar sales at these venues, they're University of Edinburgh venues. So those bar sales are not going to the promoters, to the theater promoters. That's going to the university, the landlord. And so I think some of us, now I'm I know better, but I used to think, oh man, the Gilded Balloon must be raking it in because all this money that they're selling all this booze. Well, no, they're not. They might get a taste of that, excuse the pun. They might get a piece of it as the promoter of the space, but I don't. If it is, it's small. It's most of the money is going to the university. So,
wow. So, where can people go to learn more about you?
We actually, if on the website for the Fringe company, it's fringemanagement.com. And we just updated it finally. And that's I don't know how you do you have ronplacone.com or you just use
I do. Yeah, I do.
Are you
I use
good
Squarespace.
Okay. And you can go add stuff. So we're
it's pretty easy.
Yeah, I bet it is, and I probably should try and do more on my own. But we just haven't ever gotten the expertise. Nigel's 10 times worse than I am with media and tech stuff, I think. Maybe not 10 times, but he's not better than I am, and I'm not that great. So we have to use a third-party vendor to do the website. But yeah, Mike at fringemanagement.com would be the email, but fringemanagement.com. Or my law office is blahalaw.com, which makes it easy. Just my name and law, Blaha Law. That's me.
Mike, thanks for doing this.
Yeah, this is great. I really enjoyed it. I hope I felt like I talked not over you, but more than you got a chance to talk, but I guess that's okay.
That's how it's supposed to work, yeah.
Okay. I feel guilty in a conversation. It's like I'm the one talking the whole time. And okay, fair enough. I guess I understand the podcast approach. I love it.
That was Michael Blaha. If you're in Edinburgh right now, be sure to check out all of his shows. He's producing a few. I have really bad Edinburgh FOMO. You probably, I guess it's not FOMO. It's not fear of missing out. I am missing out. There's no fear involved. Edinburgh is happening right now. I'm not there. I wish I was there. We're doing a lot of Edinburgh-centric episodes. It's not quite the same. I wish I was there. Should be there in 2025. Plan on being there in 2025. Music for the 1000 podcast is provided by Andrew Saxona. Be sure to check out his podcast, They Watching Podcast, wherever you get your podcast. Leave us a 5-star review, would you? This is still a new show. Every 5-star review helps. If you want to support this show on the sustainability end, you can do so over at patreon.com/ronplacone. For Give What You Can, Love It, you get all kinds of cool perks. You get insider info and peeks under the hood at all of my productions. I'm working on a couple things. There's going to be news regarding Left at Wall very soon, and you get all kinds of inside exclusive info. Exclusive. I said exclusive. That's not a word. You get exclusive info into that. Patreon.com/ronplacone. Also, there's a bonus podcast, stand-up clips not available anywhere else, and I'm bringing back the Zoom shows. All right, we are officially past the number of presidents, just by a little bit. We're not going to be past the number of presidents for very long. Well, actually, we're going to stay past them because more weeks will pass. Well, yeah, you get it. So we have passed the number of presidents. We have officially done it. We have passed the number of presidents. That's a milestone here at 1,000, and we're a little bit closer to that 1,000 mark. I think it's going to get here really fast. It already feels like, oh, wow, we're almost at 50. We're almost at a year's worth. I feel like I started this podcast last week. It's going to be, it really makes you feel time and how quick it really goes. See you next week. Hey guys, Ron Placone here. Take your own 1,000 challenge. No, you don't need to interview 1,000 people, although if you want to do that, go for it. Your 1,000 challenge can be whatever you want. Maybe you want to call a friend out of the blue once a week. Maybe you want to read a book every month. Maybe you want to start a different garden every season. I guess that might be dependent on where you live. Look, the point of the challenge is taking on an endeavor that enriches your life in some way, and it can be measured. And then, of course, you do it regularly. That's what 1,000 is doing for me and hopefully for you too. The main reason for this podcast and every podcast I've ever done is to build community. So take your own challenge. Then join our Facebook group. It's called 1,000 What's Your Challenge? ? That's 1,000 What's Your Challenge ? And post about what your 1,000 challenge is and the progress you're making. All I ask is that people be encouraging of each other's challenges. This is personal and vulnerable, so be cool. There's enough negativity on social media. We don't need to add to it. For those of you who aren't on Facebook, hopefully in the future we'll be expanding to places like Discord, Reddit, but for now, we're starting on Facebook. And again, that Facebook group is called 1,000
What's your challenge? See you there.